I'm Anthony Davis from 5 Minute News here on the Midas Media Network. Just bringing you some thoughts in the last few hours leading up to Election Day here in the United States, as millions of people around the world cast their ballots for the midterms. This is for control of the Senate, control of the House of Representatives, and of course the executive branch means that for the time being, Joe Biden stays where he is. But, there's a chance that if both houses, or even one house, is lost from the Democrats to the Republicans, then, effectively Joe Biden will be a lame duck, a president who won't be able to get anything done, won't have a majority in either house. I want to address the fascism conversation, the F word that has been bandied around recently. I speak as a European, somebody who comes from a place where the threat of fascism was ever present on the mainland. It's not something that happened far away. This is not something that we read about in books. This is something that historically, only 70-odd years ago, was there an actual attack from above, from the air, that effectively would have rendered my country, England, as doomed as Germany and other countries of Europe that had fallen foul of the Nazis led by Adolf Hitler. Now, fascism is a very serious word because it can actually be used to describe the extremes on either side. Some people say that the word fascism itself doesn't have a clear definition, and it can mean different things to different people. So I just wanted to explain what it means to me, and as a European, why the echoes of the Second World War between 1939 and 1945 are ever present. Nationalism is the first. Now, here in the US, we hear people talking about being a patriot and patriotic, which, of course, is something that everybody is entitled to enjoy, to be patriotic. But it seems that the flag, that the Stars and Stripes flag, has been taken by the right and used as the Confederate flag is used to become a kind of symbol of nationalistic attitudes. Now, every Democrat that I'm aware of is proud to be American. I mean, I'm an immigrant in America, and I am proud of America, and I have a US flag. So I think this kind of line of, you're not a patriot if you're a Democrat, it's not born in truth. The difference is that the extremes, the fascists, would actually use the nation's flag for abusive purposes. And in the case of the US flag, it seems that Donald Trump has taken it. He hugs it. He does this whole faux, I'm in love with the country. And yet, clearly, he doesn't really care much for America. He goes to, whoever will lend him money, whether it be Russia or the Middle East. A disdain for human rights is the next thing that is so much a sign of a rising fascist dictatorship. And in the case of the Republican Party, human rights are being ignored. The Republican Party has refused to vote for human rights in Congress and in the Senate. They ignore these types of votes. They vote no, or they don't vote at all. And within that, I would put the biggest issue on the table during these midterms, and that is abortion. I would very much put that in human rights. It is a human's right to choose if they are able to maintain a pregnancy, or if they choose to maintain a pregnancy. And certainly in the many cases we've heard about where mothers are unwell or they're not able to see through the pregnancy and either the mother or the fetus is going to die, the Republicans are not supporting intervention. And that, again, is, in my view, against human rights. The other thing on the list, or the next thing on the list of fascism, this is actually what I'm referring to, what I'm referencing right now, is actually a depiction of and description of fascism, early warning signs of fascism, which has been doing the rounds. It's available at the Holocaust Museum, and I'm sure it's something that you've seen. And that's identification of enemies as a unifying cause. Now, it makes no sense to me coming from the UK, you do not refer to the opposition as the enemy. They are the opposition. They are not the enemy. And it seems that this kind of warfare, political warfare in the United States, is ever present. Now, Democrats do not refer to Republicans as the enemy. And yet, when the glove is on the other hand, it's very much the case that Trump and his surrogates paint Democrats as the enemy, as well as the press as the enemy of the people. But we'll come to that. Supremacy of the military is the next thing, which undoubtedly Trump boasts about having the greatest military. He grew the military. He's responsible for the military, and yet at the same time pulled peacekeeping military people out of theatres of war. Decided to bring everybody home. So in one breath he's boasting about having the greatest military, and in the next breath he just doesn't want to use it. Apart from on his own people, of course, because, as we know, he involved the National Guard dealing with protests. He disappeared people off the streets of Portland. He gassed people in Lafayette Square. I mean, he really made use of the military for all the wrong reasons, against his own citizens. Rampant sexism, well, as we've heard, even the language used to describe females, whether it be Hillary Clinton or Nancy Pelosi, is disgusting. And that is something that we hear all the time from Republicans, and even Donald Trump himself with the Access Hollywood tape that everybody thought would probably end his nomination as president, and for some reason it seemed to help him win. Controlled mass media. Again, this is the denigration of the free press, the enemy of the people. Lock her up, that phrase, then used against the press, lock them up. This is something straight out of Vladimir Putin's playbook. Obsession with national security, well, that speaks for itself. The border wall, talking about building a wall, which of course is a very antiquated way of dealing with immigration. And there are so many ways which are currently in use, from obviously patrols and electronics, using technology and, camera technology and everything else. And yet Donald Trump seems to think that his wall, like the Berlin Wall separating East and West Germany, somehow is going to be the answer to all of the country's problems, when of course it isn't. Religion and government intertwined. Well, this is very, very clear, isn't it? This is where the Supreme Court has been stacked with religious extremists. This is why Roe v. Wade was overturned. This is why this kind of evangelical Christian nationalism is being pushed upon people. This is why you see now in churches up and down the country that pastors have become politicized and are preaching the language of the Republicans, of the Republican Party, rather than the good book. Labour power suppressed. Well, we've seen that in the way that Trump and Republicans they don't care for people's hourly wage. They don't care for unionizing workforces. They don't care for safety in the workplace. They deregulated so many things that make life for the individual harder. Disdain for intellectuals and the arts. Well, this is something that is widely known. Taking people who have expertise, who have an education, who have an ability to critique and do it in an unbiased and respectful way, even those people are kicked down. Journalists generally have been criticized and called the enemy of the state, which in itself is, as a journalist, for me, that is kind of the most fascist thing, to be supposedly in a free country and to be frightened to do journalism, to do accurate, factual reporting for fear of it being criticized or for fear of it being denigrated publicly. Obsession with crime and punishment. Well, we know all about that. We've, heard from Donald Trump the criticisms of Democrats saying they're not tough on crime, which is not true. As you know, more money has been invested in police services and dealing with crime and violent crime than in any other administration. It simply isn't true to say that Democrats are soft on crime or soft on immigration. It's absolutely not the case. Everything that Trump was doing is being done and more in the current administration. The only difference is they're not building a ridiculous border wall, which plenty of YouTube videos will show anybody can vault over. Rampant cronyism and corruption, well, you only have to look at the number of court cases against Trump and his cronies. All of the people that were involved in his election campaign in 2016, most of them now are either in prison or have been indicted or are wearing electronic tags. And the corruption continues, the grift, this MAGA grift of getting people to pay for Donald Trump's lifestyle. They think that they're supporting the cause, but there is no cause because he doesn't care about the people. He only cares about himself. He doesn't care about the country. He only cares about himself. And finally, and this is the one that brings us right up to the modern day and to this period here in November 2022, fraudulent elections. Now, US elections have famously been some of the safest, fairest and most respected anywhere in the world, whether it be a mail-in postal vote, whether it be an in-person vote, whether it be a ballot drop box vote. All of these things are widely used around the world, and all of these things are considered safe. However, the election fraud is coming from the Republican Party. Not just the redistricting and the gerrymandering, but the closure of polling places, the refusal to allow people to be given water while standing in line. All of these things designed to reduce the number of people voting because they're worried that if everybody votes, then they're going to lose because ultimately the United States is a progressive country. And my fear, and if you watch my interview with Ruth Ben-Ghiat, where we talk about the rise of fascism in the West, and she is as an expert on autocrats and demagogues, and she puts Donald Trump into that group because everything that I've just said to you, this obsession with crime and punishment, disdain for intellectuals and the arts, this obsession with national security, the supremacy of the military, disdain for human rights, none of those things will you see from the Democrats or from Joe Biden. None of those things. None of the things on this list have any connection or relevance to the modern Democratic Party, despite what you will hear from the right, where they describe Biden as being a fascist because he's investigating Donald Trump. Well, of course, he's not investigating Donald Trump. Donald Trump is being investigated by courts around the country for a whole range of crimes. He's been in court his entire life. He's a lifelong criminal operator and has, until now, paid people off and managed to get away with it. The point is, the Justice Department is independent under Joe Biden. It was not under Donald Trump. Donald Trump presumes that Joe Biden is running the administration in the same corrupt way that he is. And of course he isn't. Now, Joe Biden might have a son who was formerly an addict and might have got himself into hot water. And for Republicans to be calling for Hunter Biden to be investigated, a man who never sat in government, a man who never worked for the administration, is the equivalent of Tiffany Trump being asked to be investigated. Why not investigate Tiffany Trump? You know, it is not an even playing field. And this hatred that we hear, this angry rhetoric, is very new to me because, you know, it's culturally, it's something I've had to learn about and get used to. And I'm beginning to understand what it is about this kind of polarized tribalism in the United States that doesn't exist in the same way in other countries, and certainly in Europe. So be political, be activated, Vote for whoever you want to vote for, but recognize that it is not a both sides issue. There is not a, to the two parties, and it's tragic that it's a two-party system, but the two parties are not on an even keel. The Republican Party, from my perspective as an onlooker, I don't get to vote, but as an onlooker, is full of propaganda, corruption, lies, and just general craziness, aggressiveness, and political violence. And on the Democratic side, it bears no resemblance to that. It is peaceful. Democrats want Republicans to have a fair vote. And fairness and a simple vote is all that people really are asking for. And obviously these crazy candidates in over 250 districts that have put themselves up, who are election deniers, are the reason that if they win, it could mean that future elections in the United States will be sham elections, and they will be so designed to mean that only Republicans can win forever after going forward, because that is the playbook of the fascist. That is the playbook of the extremist, and that is why your vote is so essential on the 8th of November 2022. I'm Anthony Davis. You can hear me every day on the 5-Minute News podcast and on Sundays on The Weekend Show with MeidasTouch.
MeidasTouch is unapologetically pro-democracy. And look, we know you are too. So please make sure you check out our best-selling shirt and our best-selling gear, the unapologetically pro-democracy gear. And hey, while you're at it, make sure you check out my favorite shirt and one of our most famous designs. It wasn't rigged, you're just a loser. At store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.